the beginning, before the sound of swords, before the clash of thunder, and the roar of wolves, there was silence. A silence so deep, it hummed with the weight of eternity. The void, Ginnungagap, stretched endlessly between fire and ice, waiting, pulsing with potential. On one side, Muspelheim burned in searing heat. On the other, Niflheim froze in stillness. And where they met in the misty middle life began. From ice melted by fire came Ymir, the first giant whose breath fogged with ancient chaos. From him others sprang monstrous and wild children of frost and bone. Yet from the sweat of Ymir's flesh and the salt of the earth came another line, one different one destined. The gods were born not of chaos, but of order. Odin Vili and Ve sons of Bor rose from the swirling mist, eyes open, voices strong. They looked upon Ymir and saw the world he had corrupted, a place crawling with hunger and rage. And so they did what only the brave or the foolish would dare. They struck. With great fury they slew the giant whose very breath filled the cosmos. Ymir's blood became oceans, his bones the mountains, his skull the sky, and from his eyebrows they built Midgard, a realm for mankind. Thus began the order of things. Odin the Allfather sat upon his high throne in Asgard, one eye gleaming with wisdom paid in blood, the other hidden behind the veil of sacrifice. With his brothers he ruled a realm bound in fate, yet ever struggling against it. Beside him sat Frigg, who knew all things and yet spoke none. Their children, mighty and bold, carved legends into the fabric of time. Thor, god of thunder, who wielded Mjolnir with wrathful joy. Balder, radiant and beloved by all. Tyr, the one-handed warrior of justice. And Loki. O Loki. Loki, the trickster, the shapeshifter, the son of giants who dined at the tables of gods. He was laughter and deceit, fire and frost friend and traitor. He walked the lines others feared to tread. Through him came both blessing and ruin. The gods, blind in their comfort, called him brother, never seeing the smoke that curled behind his smile. It was not a single act that doomed the gods, but many. It began with whispers, with dreams, with the cold winds of prophecy that stirred even the roots of Yggdrasil, the world tree. Seers spoke of a day when sun and moon would vanish, when wolves would roam free, when the sky itself would burn. And always, always the word Ragnarok haunted the silence. The end of gods, the final battle, the twilight of everything. Odin heard the whispers and knew them true. He sought wisdom where none dared to look. He hung himself upon Yggdrasil for 9 days, and nights pierced by his own spear, to drink from the well of knowledge. He gouged out his eye to see with the mind, and still, no matter how far he wandered, the fate of Ragnarok remained unshaken. Even the Norns, weavers of destiny, trembled when asked of it. The threads were woven tight and unyielding, but the gods did not sit idle. To delay the end, they acted. When Balder dreamed of death, Frigg demanded protection from all things stone. Fire, metal, water, even disease swore never to harm him. But she overlooked one thing, the mistletoe, too young, too soft, she said. Loki heard this, and in that moment the seed of doom was planted. He crafted a dart of mistletoe and guided the blind god Hoder to throw it. Balder fell. The world wept. Light had died, and darkness rejoiced. Odin, shattered by grief, sought to retrieve his son from Hel, the realm of the dead. But even death has rules. Hel, the half-living daughter of Loki, demanded that all things in creation must mourn Balder. They did all, except one, a giantess in a cave unmoved by sorrow. Some say it was Loki in disguise, others say it was fate in flesh. Either way, Balder remained in the underworld, and the god's doom moved closer. Loki, once a brother, now a prisoner. For his crimes the gods chained him deep beneath the earth, the entrails of his own son binding him, a serpent, dripping venom above his face. His wife Sigyn held a bowl to catch the poison, but when it overflowed, drops fell upon him, and his writhing shook the world. Earthquakes were born from his pain, and still he waited. Meanwhile, the children of Loki grew in strength. Jörmungandr, the Midgard serpent, encircled the world, its body coiled beneath the sea, waiting for the day it would rise and poison the skies. Fenrir, The monstrous wolf grew so vast and terrible, the gods feared him. They bound him with a chain forged from the impossible, the breath of fish, the sound of a cat's footfall, the roots of mountains. Yet Fenrir knew, and when Tyr fed him the lie, placing his hand in the beast's mouth, as pledge Fenrir bit it off and howled into the void. The gods laughed nervously, but they knew fear, and Hel pale, and still ruled the underworld in silence. Neither cruel nor kind she waited, for Hel knew that death once opened never closed. The signs came slowly, the sun grew dim, winter stretched longer. Brothers turned against brothers. The Bifrost rainbow bridge that connected realms shimmered uneasily. The roosters crowed Gullinkambi in Asgardfjalla in Jotunheim, and the nameless blackbird in Hel. 3 cries, 3 warnings, 3 gates to oblivion. Then came Fimbulwinter, the great winter. 3 years without summer snow falling like ash, cold creeping into bones and hearts. The world once green and golden turned grey and hungry. Mortals died by the thousands. The gods watched in dread. The end had begun, but before the fire, before the swords, before the howls and the screams, there was still time to remember, to hope, to wonder if fate could be changed. Odin rode Sleipnir to the edge of all things to Mimir's well to speak with the dead and hear what only death could tell. But the answer was always the same. Prepare. Ragnarok would come, not because of hate, not because of evil, but because it must. The wheel would turn, and in turning crush the old to make way for the new. The gods, for all their might, could not stop it. They could only choose how they would fall, and so they waited each in their place. Thor stood, ready Mjolnir in hand, heart-storming. Odin sharpened Gungnir his spear and summoned the souls of dead warriors to Valhalla. Heimdall watched from the rainbow bridge Gjallarhorn at his side, and deep beneath the earth, the bindings of Fenrir creaked. The serpent stirred in the sea. The skies darkened. The fire giants gathered in Muspelheim and Surtur. The flame-bearer gripped his sword, the sun itself aflame in his hand. The stage was set. The players had taken their places. All that remained was the first note, the first breath of war, the first death that would echo into the end of time. And so ends the first movement of the Song of Ragnarok, not with battle, but with silence pregnant with fury, with mourning masquerading as peace with the gods, pretending they still held control. But the wolves were running and the sky was cracking. The twilight of the gods had begun. The snow did not melt. The sun did not rise. The world staggered on the edge of breath, holding back the scream that would shatter the sky. Fimbulwinter was no longer a warning. It was a sentence. Crops withered. Rivers turned to ice. Even the wolves of the forest grew gaunt and mad. And still mankind clawed at itself, brother against brother, father against son, blood upon blood, as if some madness had infected the soul of the world. But this was no madness. This was destiny shaking off its chains. The gods watched from Asgard. They stood tall and golden, etched into legend, but behind their eyes burned a knowing. Not fear, gods do not fear in the way mortals do, but recognition. The last chapter had been written, the ink was drying, the end had come, and then it began. A low hum, like the groan of a dying world, rolled through the roots of Yggdrasil. The tree trembled. Leaves fell like stars burning in their descent. Animals fled, birds took wing into silence. Then the chains snapped. Beneath the earth Fenrir opened his golden eyes, and the fire of vengeance lit the sky. With a single motion he shattered his fetters. The earth split, mountains crumbled, and the wolf whose jaws could engulf the horizon ran. He ran toward Asgard, toward the Allfather, toward the end he had been promised since birth. The Midgard serpent stirred in the depths. Jörmungandr, who had slept coiled around the world, now thrashed in ecstasy. His body broke the ocean's spine. Waves consumed coastlines. His breath poison made manifest turned skies black and rivers foul. From the deeps, he rose his maw wide enough to swallow ships' whole eyes locked on his eternal nemesis Thor. In Muspelheim, the fire giants marched. Surtur, oldest of flames, raised his burning sword, and the heavens recoiled from its heat. With each step, he scorched the realm beneath him, and behind him came legions of blazing titans, a wall of fire that would melt worlds. They moved not with rage, but with the calm of inevitability. They did not shout, they did not curse, they simply came because it was time, and hell, silent in her shadowed realm, opened the gates. From the dead came armies, souls forgotten, damned, betrayed, or simply past. They rose not for vengeance nor for justice, but because they must. Loki walked among them, no longer bound, no longer hiding. He wore no mask now. His face was calm, beautiful, terrible. In one hand, he held fire, in the other, ice, and in his heart, silence. Heimdall saw them all. From his tower at the edge of Asgard, he watched the skies darken, the seas rise, the dead march. He placed his lips to the Yala horn and blew. The sound was not a call, it was a shattering. It echoed through all 9 realms, a howl of finality, a note so pure it cracked stone and made stars blink. The gods turned toward the sound and knew. No more waiting. Odin donned his armor, old as creation. Gungnir, his spear, thrummed with power. The ravens Hugin and Munin circled above him, whispering the names of the doomed. Sleipnir pawed the earth, ready to fly. The Allfather gazed upon his warriors in Valhalla, those brave mortals who had died with swords in hand. They stood ready, thousands strong, gleaming in deathless fury. They would ride with him, to the end. Thor gripped Mjolnir. Lightning rippled across his skin. The thunder god's eyes burned with stormlight. His breath charged with the might of the sky. He did not speak. He did not need to. His oath had been made long ago to fight the serpent and end the world with his hammer if need be. Tyr, with one hand, armed himself for war. His gaze never faltered. His step never slowed. He was justice, duty, sacrifice. He would face the hound of hell and meet his fate with iron in his soul. Freya, god of peace and fertility, took up a sword not his own, for he had given his blade to win the heart of a giantess, and now at the edge of everything, he would fight without it. Yet he did not waver. Frigg wept, not for herself, but for all. For sons lost for love, undone for a world that could not escape its own shadow. Balder, still trapped in the realm of hell, shone with a distant light that even death could not extinguish. He waited too. Even the dead had a role to play, and so they came. From the east rode the frost giants bearing axes carved from glaciers. From the south came fire. From below came death. From the sea rose poison. And from the sky the gods descended. The plain of Vigrid stretched out before them, a battlefield born in silence. It was wide enough to hold eternity. Here destiny would be made flesh. First came Odin riding Sleipnir, his cloak black as midnight, his eye glowing with the fury of prophecy fulfilled. Before him marched the Einherjar warriors of the Hall of the Slain Banners, raised shields locked. And across the field, Fenrir stood vast as a mountain eyes, burning fangs dripping with the hunger of ages. They said the wolf would swallow the sun, and now he opened his maw and did just that. Light fled. Thor strode forward and Jörmungandr met him. They did not speak. There were no insults, no boasts. Only thunder and venom. Mjolnir cracked bone-shattered scale. The serpent coiled around him, crushing, choking. But the god roared, broke free and struck again. The sky wept lightning. Tyr found Garm, the blood-mouthed hound of hell. They clashed silent and grim. No songs would sing of them, but their battle was no less fierce. Freya met Surtur, and for a moment even flame paused. The god of peace fought with everything but a blade, and though he fell, he did so with the sun upon his brow. And Loki met Heimdall. The trickster and the watchman bound by fate, born to end each other. They fought as only brothers can, furious, desperate, unwilling, inevitable. Their blades sang, their blood mingled, and they died. One by one the gods fell. Thor slew the serpent with a final blow that cracked the world, but the venom seeped into him and he took 9 steps before collapsing beside his foe. His final breath was thunder. Odin fought Fenrir with spear and word and fire, but the wolf leapt and swallowed him whole. Then came Vidar, Odin's silent son, who had watched and waited. He stepped forward, placed his boot upon the beast's jaw, and with his sword tore it apart. Not in rage, but in duty. And as Surtur raised his sword high brighter than 1,000 suns, and brought it down upon the world, Asgard burned. Midgard burned. The Bifrost shattered. The seas boiled. The stars fell like snow. And everything was silence. But not for long, for even in death something stirred. In the ashes of gods, seeds remained. Smoke covered the sky where once stars danced, and moonlight bathed the branches of Yggdrasil. The earth, scorched and broken, groaned beneath the weight of its own undoing. The battle had ended, but there was no victory, only silence. Not the silence of peace, but the silence of aftermath of a breath never exhaled. The gods lay fallen, the seas still boiled with poison. The winds carried only ash and the scent of burned sky. And yet, amid that desolation, something ancient stirred a whisper of something not quite dead. The 9 realms had collapsed. The Bifrost was shattered into colourless shards, scattered across a sky that no longer shimmered. Muspelheim had poured its fire into the roots of the world, and Niflheim wept its frost into the same wounds. The roots of Yggdrasil blackened and split, twisted like dying veins. But the tree did not fall. It bent, it screamed, it cracked, but it did not break. For beneath the bark of devastation pulsed a truth older than prophecy. The world does not end. It transforms. In the ruins of Asgard, embers drifted through air thick with mourning. The halls of Valhalla, once filled with song and steel, now stood open to the sky. Their golden walls melted, their banners torn and forgotten. Among the debris walked 2 figures, not gods, not mortals, not alive, not dead. They were the remnants of something once bright. They were memory given legs. One was Honir, the silent one, who had always lingered on the edges of council eyes, distant words, few. He walked the broken plains with the weight of a world upon him, and still he whispered to the dust, seeking what was left of truth. The other was Balder. Yes, Balder. From the realm of hell he had returned not in triumph, not in light, but in inevitability. He stepped lightly through the ash, his radiance dimmed, but not extinguished. Where his feet touched the ground, warmed. The sky blinked in recognition. The very earth, mourning and cracked, turned toward him like a wounded child to a lost parent. Balder had died before Ragnarok. He had been the beginning of its coming, and now he would be the beginning of what came after. With him came Hoder, his blind brother, guided by the one he had accidentally slain. There was no blame between them now, only silence born of sorrow and understanding. They walked together, hands clasped not in grief, but in quiet covenant. Behind them came Magni and Modi, sons of Thor, born of thunder, raised in fury. Though their father had fallen, though Mjolnir had cracked mountains and split skulls in his final battle, it had not been lost. And now Magni bore it. The hammer, still crackling with the memory of storms, rested upon the back of a new generation. They were not alone. From the darkened forests of Midgard, untouched by battle, yet wounded by winter, emerged 2 figures, Leif and Lifthrasir, man and woman, whose names meant life and eager for life. They had hidden within the trunk of Yggdrasil, cradled in the heartwood, while the fires of Ragnarok roared. They had trembled as gods died, as stars screamed, as oceans rose to drown the mountains. But they had endured. And now, blinking in the light of a new dawn, they stepped forth into a world without gods, without rules, without memory, but not without hope. Not. Lif and Lifthrasir became the first breath of mankind reborn. They walked the broken earth, planting what seeds they could find, their fingers calloused by ash and time. They did not speak often, what could be said after the end of everything, but they worked. They built. They remembered not the glory of the gods, but the lessons carved in fire and sorrow. And far above them, Yggdrasil groaned again. In the realm beyond death, where even the Norns had ceased their weaving, a ripple moved through the stillness. The threads had been cut. The loom had burned. And yet one thread remained glowing faintly in the dark. a single strand of fate, not yet woven, not yet chosen. It pulsed with a quiet, stubborn beat. The Norns returned, not as they were no longer bound to the fixed lines of destiny, but as watchers. They took up no scissors, no thread. They only observed, and they saw what was forming not a new tapestry, but a new possibility. A world unchained from prophecy, a realm where gods could fall and from their fall men could rise. And somewhere deep within the fog of memory, the shadow of Loki laughed, not in mockery, not in cruelty, but in recognition. For this was always the way of things. Creation through destruction, renewal born from ruin. He had played his role as they all had, and now, like a snake shedding its skin, the world had changed. From the edge of the cosmos, a new sun rose. Not the old sun swallowed by wolves and buried in flame, but its daughter. Brighter, warmer, untouched by the doom of the previous world. She climbed into the sky, scattering the ash-painting light across broken stone and budding leaf. Birds returned. Rivers began to thaw. The wind carried not screams but songs, tentative, uncertain, but songs nonetheless. The world began again, but even in this new beginning, the echoes remained. Children of gods dreamed of things they did not understand, of hammers and wolves, of great trees and burning swords. Mortals looked to the stars and felt something in their bones, something older than story. They built new myths, told new tales, and always somewhere in the whisper of fire or the crash of a storm, the name of a god would drift by like wind through leaves. Odin, Thor, Freya, Loki. They had passed but not vanished, for nothing truly dies in myth. It only changes form. In time, the world would flourish. Cities would rise. The names would fade from temples, become echoes in libraries, curiosities in books. But in dreams, in that secret place where all stories hide, the gods still danced. Not as rulers, not as tyrants, but as memories woven into the soul of the earth. And the tree stood scarred but whole. Its branches reached again into the sky. Its roots drank from the past and fed the future. Beneath its boughs, Leaf and Lifthrasir raised their children. Balder watched from afar, his light a silent blessing. Magni swung Mjolnir in practice, not war. Hoda sat beside the new rivers and listened to the water. The world was quieter now, softer, wiser. And yet in the wind a voice whispered not of doom, not of ending, but of vigilance. For the wheel turns, the stars drift, and memory, like fire, never fully dies. So ends the silence, so begins the echo. In the golden hush that followed chaos, the world held its breath. Not out of fear, but out of reverence, for something sacred had passed, and something new had taken root. The echoes of Ragnarok faded not into silence, but into harmony. What was once clash and cry had become the rustling of new leaves, the murmur of clean rivers carving their paths through the bones of a burned earth. The gods were gone, and yet they were not. Their presence lingered not as rulers, but as rhythm woven into the turning of seasons, the cracking of thunder, the whisper of wind against stone. The sun climbed higher in this new sky. It was young, radiant, and unburdened by prophecy. Each morning it rose without wolves behind it, without the shadow of fate dogging its steps. It warmed the cracked face of the world, coaxing life from soil that had once seen the blood of gods and monsters. And with each passing day, the world remembered how to breathe. In Midgard, the children of Lif and Lifthrasir multiplied. They tilled the earth-crafted homes from stone, and wood raised their voices, not in lament, but in song. They did not know the names of the gods that had once shaped mountains or fought the seas. They did not remember the feel of Odin's gaze or the sound of Thor's laughter. But they felt it buried in their bones, etched into their instincts like a forgotten lullaby. When lightning cracked the sky, they raised their eyes without fear, as if greeting an old friend. When justice was demanded, they listened to a voice deep inside, ancient and unyielding, as if guided by tears' one-handed courage. When they told tales by firelight, they spoke of serpents, hammers, golden apples, and tricksters who spoke in riddles and vanished in smoke. The new age did not erase the past, it transformed it. Yggdrasil, though burned and splintered, grew again. Its bark was scarred, but within its rings lay the memory of the cosmos. Beneath its shade, animals returned cautious at first, then bold. The stags who once drank from its roots now danced again beneath its boughs. Birds nested in its branches, their songs different, but no less divine. The tree no longer bore the weight of prophecy. Now it bore the quiet patience of possibility. And yet in this reborn world, strange things stirred. Far to the north, where ice never fully melts, where the sun is shy and the nights stretch endlessly, there grew a mountain from the ashes of Jotunheim. Upon its peak, a figure stood draped not in armor nor in flame, but in solitude. He had no name in this new world, for names belonged to the old. But once long ago, he had worn many all-father wanderer warmaker seer. He had died within the jaws of the wolf, yet something in him had refused to fade. He was not Odin, not anymore. He was memory distilled into form, a whisper, given shape. He did not seek power nor command worship. He simply watched. From his perch, he saw the new Midgard unfolding not as a god overseeing mortals, but as a father letting go of his children. And in his eye, once sacrificed for knowledge, now shone only understanding. A final, quiet grace. He was not alone. In the east, beneath hills of green and gold, walked a woman with eyes of sky and hair like the falling night. She did not remember the halls of Asgard or the laughter of her sons, but she remembered love. And so she planted flowers where fire once scorched. She sang lullabies to the wind and listened as the wind sang back. She had no throne, no titles, no followers. But the earth healed beneath her feet. Once she had been called Frigg, they would not meet. Not in this age, for the time of gods had passed. But they watched each from their edge of the world, guardians, not of fate, but of balance. If ever the wheel turned too far, if ever memory was drowned in arrogance, they would not intervene. But the wind would change, the stars would flicker, and the trees would rustle with warning. And so the world turned. Magni and Modi, sons of thunder, taught others how to build with strength, not just destroy. They did not speak of their father, for no words could capture him. But when storms gathered, they stood beneath them without fear, and others followed. Balder walked the land not as a prince, but as a healer. His light was gentler now, not blinding, but guiding. Where he passed, sorrow lifted. Hoder blind still listened to the voices of the world, and taught others to hear what cannot be seen. Together, they were not rulers of a new pantheon, but caretakers of a forgotten promise, that even in ruin there is renewal. And in the deepest places where roots met rock and fire, whispered to frost, something new began to stir. Not danger, not doom, but a question. A single question, older than time, yet always new. What comes next? For this is the truth behind Ragnarok. It was never the end. It was a cycle closing. A breath exhaled. A page turned. The gods in their rise and fall were not warnings or punishments, but reflections. They mirrored the best and worst of those who remembered them. Their deaths were not punishments, but inevitabilities. Their rebirths, not resurrections, but renewals. And now the story waits again. Somewhere, a child is born who dreams of fire and wolves. Somewhere, a storyteller spins a tale of a hammer that split the skies and a serpent that choked the seas. Somewhere a song is sung in a language long lost, but the melody feels known. The stars still shine and Yggdrasil still grows. Perhaps one day, the old names will rise again. Perhaps not. But the world is no longer bound to fate. It walks its own path now. And that above all is the gift the gods gave in their dying freedom. So when the thunder rolls, when the wind howls, when the night feels heavy with ancient breath, listen, not with fear, with wonder. For the end is never truly the end. It is only the silence before a new story begins.